when this ability to interact with the biological, physical level of reality, when that fails, does your experience of the imaginal continue? I would suggest that we stop thinking about there being a world which we experience, which is reality, and start understanding everything as relational. Everything.
Directly addressing everybody that's watching this, you have got to watch the pod book with Tim Freke. It is bloody marvellous, and it will be life-changing.
I've been wanting to speak to Tim Freke for a little while. You know how it is when the universe kind of floats somebody's name past your awareness. I've been hearing about Tim Freke for years. I finally got round to inviting him onto the channel, and I'm so glad that I did. Tim is the author of over 35 books. It's an extraordinary amount of work. Let me just read you this. Tim Freke, philosopher. He's an internationally respected authority on spirituality and has a passionate voice for our collective awakening. Yes, he does. And he's fantastic. And he talks about it a lot in this interview that I did with him. His groundbreaking ideas on inspirational presence have changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people throughout the world. Now, in this conversation, we talk about his latest ideas on reality and the process of all that is. And he actually does talk about it in terms of existence as a process of becoming. Take a listen. See what you think.
Tim, thanks very much for coming on board. I've really got to ask you this question. You have written well, if we include the pod book, which we'll talk about shortly, 35 books plus, let's put it that way. And you openly admit that in some of your earlier work, you were wrong. Tell us a little bit about that. What's brought you to that conclusion?
Well, wrong in very specific ways. And most of my books come from what gets called a perennial philosophy viewpoint, which the idea that there's a commonality to human spirituality, which you can see if you look at the mystics in all of the different traditions. And so I had that perspective, like there's a general wisdom, and it's just perennial, it's there, and all those things. And then over the last 12 years, really, I've come to think that's not true, that actually everything evolves, including spiritual wisdom. And the thing in particular I came to question was the idealist. It's a misleading term for people who are listening, not familiar with it. It's not to do with having high ideals. It's to do with the idea that everything exists in consciousness. And that is a part of the perennial philosophy, and I now think it's mistaken. And what I've been developing for the last 12 years, starting with the book behind me, Soul Story, and now this pod book that you mentioned, is about presenting an alternative which can maintain the recognition of the importance of spiritual experience, but change how we understand it. And that's what I've been doing. And that has meant coming out and going, yeah, I was wrong about that. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about that. All of which stems from questioning the perennial philosophy.
So one of the things in talking to you, Tim, is I'm incredibly aware of your amazing sharp logic and your ability to construct things very, very precisely in logical argument. My brain doesn't work like that. So perennial wisdom, and what you seem to say there was that actually that consciousness is not fundamental, the existence of the universe. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think it's evolved like everything. In fact, the fundamental idea for me now is that what existence is a process of becoming. That the great insight that was had in the scientific revolution, it led to the insight 100 years ago that the universe isn't a thing, it's a process. And I think that changes everything. And what I experience is this constant becoming, and in which the present is always new and it builds on the past. And so the hypothesis that I'm exploring is that's what this is. This is a process of the realization of new possibilities based on what's happened before. And one of those possibilities is a system start to become conscious. And it doesn't look like it's fundamental to me. It looks like it comes quite late. But what I'm suggesting is all the valuable things to us come late because it's getting more and more rich, that process. So it starts with the simplest, not the most complex. So a fundamental way that our ancestors have quite understandably understood things is with what I think of as a mythic understanding. I love myths. Let me just say that straight up. I've written lots of books on myths where they're still alive today. They're beautiful. But in terms of actually understanding the nature of reality, we've generally moved on. We don't think the thunder is a big man with a hammer. Well, we need to move on in spirituality generally, I think. And what mythic thinking does, it's anachronistic in the sense that it takes things from one time or one level of evolution, the human level, and retrospects it to the beginning. So the idea that there's a big mind at the beginning, which is what I would have said, is taking one of the latest things to evolve, the psyche, and going, it was there at the beginning, was it? Or actually, is it the latest thing that's evolved, which is why it's so important to us? We take things like intentionality. Yes, and the big mind intended to know itself or intended to create the universe. Did it? Or is that something which has evolved much, 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 much later, and we've retrospected it? And that's where we need to catch up. Spirituality needs to catch up with the other developments in human understanding and not get stuck in the past. Because we don't look back on anything else. We don't go, yes, brain surgery. Let's go back to what the ancients believed. Because Plato, I believe, thought it was a cooling system. The brain was a cooling system for the blood. So it's like, yeah, you could go back to the ancient wisdom, or you could go, we've built on that. It's not. I want to just say, it's not. I'm not dismissing those people. I love them, but we build on it. I can only think these thoughts because they opened the doorway and did what they did, and then we need to keep the process of evolution going.
Okay. We'll come back round to that again because there are some threads I hope that I will revisit in that. Could you just explain your use of these two words, which is consciousness and psyche?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. That's really, really great question, because people use words in all these different ways, and that's fine. I mean, as long as we're consistent and we explain what we mean by words. So it's great that you asked me those things, because I mean something absolutely obvious and anyone can get it now. These are not strange philosophical or theological concepts for me. So by consciousness, I think really it's making it a noun is a kind of a mistake. What I'm aware of is I am conscious of some things and I am not conscious of other things. And I'm aware that I'm conscious of whatever I pay attention to. So I'm conscious right now of you, but I wasn't conscious of my left foot. Oh, but now I am, because I've moved my attention to it. I am not conscious when I'm asleep at night, but I am conscious when I wake up in the morning. And wherever I put my attention, the metaphor that works for me is I process that in high definition. And that what conscious experience is high definition experience. So processing. So I know that I'm taking in huge amounts unconsciously, which is why when the alarm clock goes off, I wake up. I'm unconscious, but I'm actually still, if someone came in the room, I'd wake up. So we're taking in massive amounts of information. And I think what's happened, just to expand that idea a little, to make sense of it, I think it's evolutionary, I think what's happened is that with the evolution of life has obviously come the evolution of death, because living systems are very fragile, and also the ability to take in more and more information. And that's in order to survive better. But most of that information doesn't matter. It's like you are right now filtering out the experience of your clothes on your skin. Now, you might be aware of it now, I've mentioned it, but before you were habituated to it. You didn't take it in because it'd be a waste of your processing. But if it suddenly changed, you notice it. And so I think what's happened is that living systems have evolved the ability to pay attention, to be conscious of information that matters to them. And that's what we're experiencing. So that's what I mean by consciousness or being conscious. And then by psyche, I mean the level of experience we're having all the time of an imaginal domain. So one way that I like to think of that is on the sensory level. Right now, people who are listening are hearing me make funny noises. But on the level of the psyche, they're understanding the meaning of the words. And it's not in the funny noises. It's on the level of the psyche. And that's it. You dream in it. You talk to yourself, which is what thinking is. You can explore it with shamanic techniques. In fact, the whole of spirituality has been about the psyche. And the word psyche is just the Greek word for the German word soul. They're the same. So if you go back to the etymology, the origin of the words, what people have been saying forever, really, is, we experience two domains. One is the domain of the imaginal, made of images, psyche or soul. One is the sensory world that we sense with the biological senses. How do they relate? What is their nature? That's the great question. Spirituality has always been about going off and exploring that imaginal domain. And I think it's really, really important. Modern science reduces it to the brain. I don't think that's correct. Traditional spirituality goes, it pre-exists. It's the reality. And we've fallen into matter, which is dense and a trap. And I don't think that's right either. I think we're in an evolutionary process which has led to the evolution of the psyche or the soul. And that it's the most emergent level of this 14 billion year process that has got us from the very simple beginnings right the way up to this.
Okay, I think now, and if we're talking about psyche, if you're using the word soul in the term that we would use it spiritually, that your awareness and the interaction with the imaginal domain continues after this bit of us has ceased to function.
Yes. So my book behind me is called Soul Story, because I wanted to go, look, this is about the soul. English is such a great language because we've borrowed words from so many other languages. And what happens then is you start with two words that just mean the same thing. And then people go, well, let's use them differently. Let's use psyche to mean this, and mind, well, let's use that for, I don't know, talking to yourself. And let's use soul for something else, which is like, what I'm saying is, I don't think that helps, actually. I think there's one domain, you experience it now, and the question of life after death is simply when this ability to interact with the biological, physical level of reality, when that fails, does your experience of the imaginal continue? And the evidence, I think, from near-death experiences, terminal lucidity, et cetera, is, yeah, it does. So then we're stuck with, why? How can that be true? And that's what I'm trying to address in my pod book and as a philosopher is I take it that is true from my experience of being around death. I used to work with people who are dying. The question is, why? And how do these levels relate in such a way? And the two options, I think, basic options are either it pre-exists, which is the traditional view of psyche or soul, or the new idea is it has evolved, so that everything has evolved, including the ability to survive the death of the body.
And this is precisely why, actually, people need to listen to your pod book, because it's a series of relatively short videos. You do them about 15 minutes or so per chapter, as you call it. But over to you. Tell us about pod book.
Yeah, thank you. So everything's led to this, really. This is my magnum opus for sure. I mean, it's on another level to all my other books, I think. On a completely new level. It's just gone so... It's taken a long time, though. I mean, I took off 8 years to do it. And I'm finally ready because I wanted to create a robust, comprehensive, new philosophy which united science and spirituality. In other words, just united human knowledge into one narrative. and which could give spirituality the importance I think it deserves by understanding it in a new way. And science in a new way too, but particularly spirituality, which has been my main focus. And the reason that I'm doing it as a pod book, I made up this thing called a pod book. Let's see if people catch on to it or not. I don't know whether they will, because it's kind of the love child of a podcast and a book. So rather than writing a book and then throwing it out into the world, I want it to be there as me. I want it to be there the whole time going, hello, it's Tim. I'm 66. I'm going to die like you. And whoa, what's this? And to keep that sense of inquiry together. And I think it's worked. And the response has been absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's very small. It's only just come out. But I'm very pleased with it. And the reason the chapters are not too long is because the ideas in every chapter, I think, as you'll find as you go through it, are big ideas. So if there's too many, it's overwhelming. So I want to go, right, get this. Got that? Okay, now get this. Because if you come with me long enough, then you can evaluate it for yourself. And by the 17th chapter, I review it all, because I've gone through enough around how do we know what's true? What is the nature of existence? How can we survive death? All those things. And I'm ready to pull it all together, including how should we live, of course, and even politics. How do we relate to each other, and how do we do that? And then I've got about another 80 chapters after that, which I'm in the middle of doing. I know it's huge, because I've gone into all these areas. So then after that, I've looked at magic. I experience that in my life. How can life become dreamlike? Is that evolutionary? I think it is. Quantum physics, where does that fit in? Entropy, how does that fit? Going through thing after free will, do we have it? I think we do, and on and on. So that's what I'm in the process of doing now every day. I'm doing it before I speak to you. I'll do it when I stop speaking to you, until that's done, because I am 66 and it's not going to last forever. So I want to offer this out. And the other thing is, I'm lucky. I'm able to just do it and give it away. So why would I not? And that's what I'm doing, because I'd like to see it go out, and I'd like people to have the chance to see if they find these ideas as beautiful as I do. But I'm aware that at the moment, Tim, I'm a kind of lone voice in the wilderness, because I'm presenting something new. So generally, people are attracted to things that fit with their preconceived ideas. Whereas I'm actually going, look, I had to question all mine. If you're the sort of person who's willing to question all yours, you might find, as I have done, that this is better than where we were before. And then if enough people do that, everything moves on.
Indeed, it does. And you mentioned quantum physics there, and actually the whole idea of if embodied consciousness, if you like, in this sense, the opportunity to actually pick it up and examine it for itself. If it's not present, it's what you were saying earlier on about the looking back in time. If there was nothing there, then people couldn't think in a certain way. But you're putting it out there, potentially people got to go and go, you've got to hang on. So I just get so excited about this. Directly addressing everybody that's watching this, you have got to watch the pod book with Tim Freke. It is bloody marvelous, and it will be life-changing. So I don't often say that, Tim, but I really like what you're doing. It's really, really fantastic. Subscribers of my channel will love what you're doing. So they got to get over there.
Well, let me say back, Tim, it's like just, to you, but to anyone, I'm delighted for people. First of all, I think we're moving together. So it doesn't, my favorite thing is when people say to me, oh, you're articulating what I'm trying to think. And it's like, yeah, that's my job. I can't do plumbing. I can't do doctoring. I can't do much of any use, but I can do this. So this is what I can bring to the party. And I love that. And we are moving together. So people are, there will be a small group of people at the leading edge who are having similar insights. And I'm trying to articulate them in this way and make them really robust. And then the other thing is, I'm happy if people, everything I'm saying on this podcast, I want to give to everyone who's listening. You take it, run with it. You don't have to go, oh, that belongs to me. It doesn't belong to me. I'm not interested in it belonging to me. I'm interested in it belonging to us, if it's of any use.
Bless you. That's okay. Look, I want to go back a few years. 12 years old, you were sitting on the side of a hill. Something happened. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was my own little moment where it kind of started. I mean, I'd always been intensely curious. Life had always seemed very mysterious. I can remember a conversation when I was very small with my father, just walking, going, what is this? And da da da, and all those questions, even as a kid, kids ask them. And I remember my dad saying to me, "Oh, Timothy, greater men than you and I have asked these questions and find no answers." And I can remember quietly to myself, it's very vivid, thinking, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, you can't have a question this big without there being an answer to find. And so I've spent my life doing that. And the key moment for me spiritually was when I was 12, sitting on the side of this hill, looking at the small town where I grew up, thinking, why is everyone pretending they know what's going on and they don't? And why is everyone rushing around doing things which don't seem very important? And something happened, which in retrospect was a shift in the psyche into a more what I would call emergent or more evolved state, which I hadn't had before. And the world was full of love. It was overwhelming experience of what I call big love and a communion. And the only context I had for it was my mother used to take me to church when I was smaller. I'd stopped going by then, but and I'd been told God is love, and it was like, oh, this is God. And that was the beginning of going, oh, right, well, this is the thing I need. I need to experience this. I need to know how I can go deeper into it, and I need to know what it is, and I need to find people who've also experienced it. And that's what led me eventually to the perennial philosophy was, there's loads of people who've experienced it. And they're all over the world and all over history. Let's find out who these guys are, and then experiencing it again and again and again, and then sharing it right from the start, really, sharing it with others. That's been a big part of my life, and I still do that.
You run retreats all over the place, all over the world. Is that right? Do you still do international ones?
Yeah, no, I haven't done. I've completely, for the last period, I've just gone, right, it's the pod book. I've got to give myself to that. I have in the past, and I still do events online, like in Japan and elsewhere. I loved traveling. I hope when the pod book's done that I will travel again and being with people, especially when it's for the first time, or many people come because they've experienced it once or twice, and they come to the retreat, and then you're just in that enormous oneness or communion, and this love, this benevolence, just so beautiful. But we are doing one, Tim, this year in the UK. So I'm doing one in Glastonbury, where I live, in early October, and that's the only one I'm doing this year.
Right, so that's early October, and they can find people can find out about that by going to your website,
timfreke.com, but you have to spell my funny name the right way. If you spell my name the right way, Freke, you will definitely find me, because there's not many of us freaks left.
What date in October?
It is, I should know that, shouldn't I? I'm going to tell you because that's important. It is the beginning, so I think it's the 3rd to the 5th.
Right, okay.
We do have a few places as I'm speaking here.
Okay, and where?
It's in Glastonbury in the UK.
In what building? Or
it's in our home. Because I have this lovely annex which we built for my mother when she was alive, and she is no longer with us. But we created this big space where we could gather. So it'll be an intimate gathering, not like when I used to go to these big places. But it's so nice for me because I can go, come to me, and we'll hang out together, and we'll go deep into this big love, and then see what you think.
When you do this sort of thing with a group, do you take people through the same process, or do you literally just, okay, I know where we're going, but let's see where we're going to go, how we're going to get there?
It's a bit of both. So primarily I'm focused on experiential things when we get together for a retreat, because they can get the philosophy from books, they can get that online more easily, they can talk to me. I have an online community which meets every Sunday, and they can get ideas. We can discuss ideas, we can do questions. So I focus on the experiential. So there's a number of techniques that I know to do with connection that I will use, and then what comes in up between them depends on the group. But I know the journey we're going to make, and I'm very confident of it because I've done it so many times with literally thousands of people, and nearly everybody by the end is you get it. So by the Sunday when you're going home, it's like, oh my God, right, what the hell was that? And then it's about, okay, how can you take that into your life? And the truth is, we need to keep revisiting it to bring it into our lives.
Do we need to keep revisiting it, in your opinion, throughout our life?
Yeah, but because it never stops evolving. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm in the 60s now. It started when I was 12. And what blows me away is I feel like I'm just beginning, both in terms of my understanding, but also in my experience. Because the great thing that people miss is that how we understand things changes how we experience it. It's not some abstract, and it can be just blah, 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 blah. But if you get it, which most people have that experience, of course, when they have insight, they go, whoa, and then their experience shifts.
Mm.
And that's why it's important. It's not just a commentary. It actually shifts how you experience this, changes it profoundly.
Do you think in that moment, as a perception sinks in and the light bulb goes, oh, hello, and you get that shift, do you think that literally the reality changes because, and to put it at a basic level, your vibration here has shifted? Do you think there's a possibility that literally the excitations that we call atomic structure change?
I would suggest that we stop thinking about there being a world which we experience, which is reality, and start understanding everything as relational. Everything. So what exists is the relationship between you and the world. So if you change, the relationship's just changed. And what the world is to me depends on how I can sense it, the nature of my eyes. I wear glasses like you. I take them off. It's a different world. I can't register certain light frequencies. I can't hear like a bat hears. They live in different worlds. And yet what we're experiencing is the same world. It's just in relationship to us. And right the way down, you see that everything is relational. We talked about quantum physics earlier. What I find fascinating about quantum physics is, I'm just doing a chapter on it, was what was in my mind. But the relational understanding of quantum physics is that for something to exist as matter and not just a mathematical possibility, it needs to come into relationship with something else. And when it does, bang, it's different. And that's because everything is relational. Everything. So when you shift, you change that relationship. I do think that the psyche can have, I think there's what I would call psychocausality, that the psyche is not just floating above the material world. I think it impacts it, which is why we have so many strange experiences, synchronicity, intentional magic, all those things, which I've had far too many examples of with myself and everyone I know to not go, well, that's real. How the hell does that happen? And I think it happens through the fact that, well, I think actually, essentially, it's an extension of the psychocausality that means I can go, I'm going to intend my hand to raise. Whoa, I just did it. It's like that which affects my body can also go out and affect anything, potentially. We're only learning how to do that, but it does happen. There's a kind of a psycho ecosystem, it seems to me, just as there's a biological ecosystem which is affecting the material world.
Yeah, because when you say we're only just learning to do that, it's like really we're, as a collective, human species is only just now really starting to understand that the power of the mind, the power of and by de facto the psyche can influence matter in that was categorized as something separate in the old way of looking at the world. But I mean, that's a new territory. That's a new frontier in terms of everybody almost starting to wake up. And that's what you term by the evolving universe, isn't it, really? The universe becoming.
Yes, I think we're, I mean, people have been aware of it right back to shamanic times. In fact, what's interesting is you could make an argument to say the very first technologies that people started harnessing were the technologies of the psyche or the mind. because understanding biology or physics was just too much. But they soon noticed that you could use intentionality, ritual, magic, all the things that make up the esoteric traditions. Then obviously we've had the scientific revolution, which was then going, oh, look, then we can, if we pay close attention to matter and biology, we can understand it, and we have, in ways that our ancestors couldn't dreamt of, hence being able to speak on the internet. But that came along with a kind of reductionism, which went, oh, the psyche's nothing. It's just a byproduct of the physical world. The physical world is really just a byproduct of the atomic world, and blah, blah, blah. Which I think which is the opposite. This is good to say, actually, Tim, because a lot of people, when they hear I changed my mind, I get people all the time going, oh, Tim's become a materialist. He's not an idealist, now he's a materialist. I am definitely not at all. The two traditional views are, it's all consciousness, it's all mind, or no, it's all matter. I think they're both wrong. And I don't think you can reduce the higher levels of emergence to the lesser. That's the point. It's like the higher levels of emergence, e.g., biology compared to physics, psyche compared to biology, all of that. You can't reduce them. They're more than. That's the point. So it's not reductionist. It's not going, oh, really, it's all matter. It's going, no, look, it's a domain in itself. And it's not only, it's the most emergent, which is why we love it so much. And it has an effect. And it's causal. It's not all just coming up from the bottom. A lot of people in physics think there's some rules at the bottom and everything's just a byproduct. So if you knew the rules, you'd know that I was now going to say giraffe. And it's ridiculous. Actually, there's causality in every direction. And that's psychocausality is real.
Yeah, and the causality in every direction is exactly what you mean by relationships, because everything is absolutely interconnected and in relation to. I need to just ask you, jumping around a bit, I know, but yeah, I knew it wouldn't be a problem. Going back to your 12-year-old experience, your father, did he actually play a fairly important part in your upbringing, in your thinking, or was it just like that was an isolated incident?
Well, my dad wasn't there when I had the awakening. I was
Right.
on my own. I was with my dog. It kind of sounds like a Disney movie, doesn't it? But my dad and my mum, obviously, I guess, played important roles, different roles. My father, because he was a skeptic about everything, and that gave me a kind of a questioning nature, I guess. And my mother, because she was just extraordinary, really. She was just so full of goodness and love. She kind of knew all the things I was discovering and didn't know why she knew them. She just did. She wasn't particularly spiritual or anything, really. She was just an extraordinary woman who touched so many people. So I had that in the background. It took me a while to recognize it, and then when I did, it was like, oh, right, okay, I see, right. I've been looking over, I've been scouring the world for a spiritual teacher, and I had my mum the whole time.
You said just now that you didn't feel that you go along with this idea that in spiritual circles, there's quite often this phrase where we're remembering our past. We're going back to the stage where, but in a way, what you just said about the ancients being able to use the mind and to influence matter, surely that is where we're going now, and therefore we're remembering. No?
So there's plenty of things which people did in the past that we need to not forget. And we can learn a lot by going back and going, oh, what were they doing there? But things have also evolved. I mean, one of the things which I find fascinating is that I've written a few books on shamanism and hung out with a lot of indigenous shaman. And amazing people. I'm with full respect, great knowledge of some of them anyway, of what they were doing, but very little curiosity. So I did some work with the Kogi Indians in Colombia when I was much younger, and not in Colombia, but from here. And there was a film made, two films made. In the second film, some of their shaman were brought to this country, and were taken to see a telescope being able to look at the stars. And it was absolutely fascinating because the scientist who was running the institution they were in was asking them all these questions. Oh, so you believe this? And what do you think about this? And they didn't ask a single question. They had a telescope that could show them the stars. They had all this knowledge. They didn't ask anything. All they wanted to do was say what they knew. And I think it's that which has happened to us. You haven't stayed still. We've moved on. We've become questioning. And that requires reflection. And it's hard, which is why it's taken me all my life to question my own ideas. Because it's another level of the psyche where you can see your own ideas. So having done that, you can then go back and go, oh, that sounds good still. That sounds good. And I'm quite up for that. The thing which I'm saying no to is the idea that you are already, and I have this is criticizing myself, that you already are this perfect self, and you've forgotten, and you just need to remember. You already know everything, or you're God, and you've forgotten. You've fallen into the illusion. You've fallen into Maya. You've got lost. You've developed an ego. You're trapped in the body. It was what Plato believed. All these people. What I'm saying is no. You're not a perfect self. That doesn't exist. You're evolving like everything else, and there's the possibility to become not your true self, but your new self. And that what's happening is that you're emerging onto these next levels. And that doesn't mean there weren't people in the past who already got to those levels. Of course, and everyone's unique. So some people, I know loads of people in spirituality who are really good at some very high levels of communion, but their personal problems are massive. We're all different. It's like you can't, and when I criticize the past, I feel a bit like, I'm not trying to compare myself, but I feel a bit like, when Einstein came in and went, oh, Newton's wrong. Gravity, there's not a force of gravity. It's actually distortions in space-time. He didn't go, that idiot Newton, what did he know? He went, he's the greatest genius that has ever lived. And because of him, I can now say this. And that's how I feel with these people, whether, Rumi and Bodhidharma and the Gnostics and Lao Tzu, if he existed, all those people, the writers of the Upanishads, whoever the hell they were, these are geniuses. And now we can go, we can understand this in a new way.
Wonderful. So really that phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants, is completely what you're talking about there. That's the complete respect. Is there anything that you actually just want to share in a fairly succinct sort of way?
Yeah, I think, well, there's one bit of practical thing I'd like to share, which is that at any point, if people want to talk about this with me and go deeper as in person, then I do every Sunday, 7 o'clock UK time. We come online. There's a relatively small group of us to explore ideas and experiences. And that's key to me. They come together. They're both important. How we sense and make sense gives rise to how we experience. And we try and make sense of our experience. So they're complementary. And eventually, it's about coming back to that state that I discovered by accident when I was 12, where you just come into love with life. And I couldn't get through my life if I didn't have it, which is why I want to share it with others. Because life, we've called this retreat, Tim, that we're doing this time, I've changed the title, and it's called Big Love in a Bittersweet World. Because it's hard. Life is hard. And it's hard because it's evolutionary. So we have to live with biology. We just have to live with it, which means it goes wrong and it hurts and it does all the things that biology does. We have to live with human beings who are still living in the Middle Ages, who, are dangerous. And we have to live with the laws of nature, the physics. It's like we have to deal with that, and then it's in us. I have to live with all the less emergent parts of Tim, which suddenly burst out unexpectedly, and go, "Whoa, where did that come from?" And that's the challenge. That's why it's a bittersweet world, but it is also sweet. It's incredibly sweet. And the more you tune into the more emergent levels, the more you, which is what another word for just spirituality, then the more you see it's magic, it's beautiful, and it has profound meaning, which is why, although the pod book is philosophy, I called it Why Your Life Really Matters, because that's what it reveals, I hope, that we're in something here. It is hard, but it's significant, and it's significant for every single one of us. That's what I want to try and get across, and that your life has deep meaning, and it doesn't end with death, and we're on an amazing journey to something utterly, utterly sublime, and we're not just bystanders in it, we're contributors to it.